like Stan Van Gundy.
And T, I hate that Stan Van Gundy is the guy, and I know that you love it. And I will say this before you lay out the numbers and before you give the support, because there were some things inside of your rant right before we went out at the top of the hour that make a lot of sense from Stan Van Gundy being the guy right now. And I think defensively is the first thing that I agree on.
Yes.
Because I don't know if the Pelicans could be any worse.
It'd be tough to.
It would be tough.
The Alvin Gentry era in defenses and turnovers, like the lack of emphasis placed on those two things is borderline inexplicable.
And I just think the simple fact that he will get them back on defense and have them turned around before the ball crosses half court will give them an opportunity to be better defenders. Their energy level needs to pick up. The reason why I don't like the Van Gundy hire, and as I told you in hour one, it was more depressing to see that the finalists for this job were Mark Jackson, Jason Kidd, and Stan Van Gundy. I know that there was that there was a selection, there was a group that was interviewed for this space, but I would imagine that from an NBA realm that the Pelicans from presently the way that they sit, the way that they're made up right now, leadership, front office, and the roster have to be a top 3 job as far as attraction and attractiveness goes in the league. Obviously, you have the centerpiece of Zion Williamson, the player.
You have an all-star now.
You got an all-star
an all-star
Ingram.
wing, which is exactly what everybody in the world wants.
You got arguably the best two-way player in the league in Jrue Holiday. If he's not, he's in the discussion of being that. Maybe Kawhi Leonard would be the guy, but Jrue Holiday's right there.
I mean, Stan laid it out on the Zach Lowe's podcast earlier this summer, where he was just talking about, look, you got a bunch of guys that are under 25 with a ton of NBA experience and a ton of talent. They just play terrible defense.
And then you've got Trajan Langdon, Swin Cash, and David Griffin in the front office, which seems like a trinity that will attract talent and run it right. I was a little let down that Griffin settled on Van Gundy because to me it feels like a settle of a hire. Obviously the Detroit time was horrendous, and like you said, he was given personnel responsibilities there, which seemed like that was the death of him. He doesn't have personnel decision-making power here, but his time in Miami and his time in Orlando should be highlighted by the numbers and by the wins, but all I remember by those 2 stops, T, is discontent. Being run off after 21 games by Pat Riley to coach that Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal team, and then taking those Orlando Magic teams with Dwight Howard to the NBA Finals. I should remember those runs with Orlando and the way that they were playing with Howard, but all I remember is Van Gundy bickering with his best player in Dwight Howard in the public, in the media, and to me, that's a red flag here because this team has a nucleus of a lot of youth, a lot of energy, and a lot of talent, and you've got to be able to relate to them. And at 61 years old,
well, but that's one thing Van Gundy's really good at. You've heard him on DP show. You've heard him on DP show. If you've heard him talk on social issues, I actually have no question that he will be able to connect with the players.
He will be able to talk about them off the court.
Yeah.
He will be able to relate to them off the floor, T. I need somebody to motivate Zion Williamson right now.
Good, you need somebody in there.
I need somebody motivating Lonzo Ball right now. I need somebody motivating Brandon Ingram, who is right now sitting at a crossroads in his career where are you going to be a year in, year out all-star? Are you going to be a flash in the pan? Right?
Okay.
Like, are you going to have somebody come in here and continue to motivate you, coach you, make you a better player when you're considered one of the elite in the league? You're at the top of your game. Can you get better?
Yeah. Well, and so there's a lot to get to here, and I'm going to try to squeeze it into a couple of minutes because we're running a little late. But, I would start with this. In terms of those being the finalists for the job, one thing that you have to understand is that this is a hire that the Pelicans had to get right? Like I said, I think there are levels to winning. The Pelicans need to start to take the first steps, right? So, like a young, more exciting hire. I mean, it's stuff that David Griffin's tried before in the past, right? Like maybe not young, but going with David Blatt, right? And kind of outside the box hire. It didn't work, but whatever. Like I'm down for high risk, high potential type of hires. But this is a Pelican team that, as you said, they're not really in a rebuild phase. Stan Van Gundy did not leave his nice analyst job to join a rebuild. Like this is a roster that can win immediately. And I think Stan Van Gundy accomplished that. Somebody in the chat says, well, if it's such a good job, why did so many people turn it down? I don't think anybody turned it down.
Anybody turned it down.
Ty Lue would be the closest to that just because he said he was coming, and then he never actually made it down here. Stan Van Gundy was the first one that they extended the job to. Okay, so let's just get into baseline numbers. Because as I said, the goal for the Pelicans right now just simply needs to be being a above 500 team that makes the playoff consistently. Stan Van Gundy is a winner. Let's look. Since the Pelicans moved to New Orleans back in 02 and 03, they have played 18 seasons, Jordy. In those 18 seasons, they have 7 playoff trips. They have 2 playoff series wins. They have one 50-win season. In 11 seasons as a head coach, Stan Van Gundy has 8 playoff trips, so that's 1 more. He has 9 playoff series wins, which is 7 more, including a winning record in the playoffs, and he has 5 50-plus win seasons. So that's 5 times what the Pelicans as a franchise since they came here has. In fact, the Pelicans, since they got here, are 673 and 777. That's their overall record. Stan Van Gundy alone has 523 wins. He has almost won in 7 less seasons. He has almost won as many basketball games as your entire franchise has. And he does this carrying a 57% win percentage. But let's talk about defense, right? Because that's where they've been so bad. Right. And let's get into these numbers, okay? These are Stan Van Gundy teams and multiple defensive stats. In terms of turnover percentage, another thing that we talked about, right? Stan Van Gundy's teams have finished in the top 10 6 times, better than the league average, so the top half 8 times, and this is all out of 11 years, right? They've been in top 10 in the defensive rating 8 times out of the 11, and 3 times they found themselves in the top 5. In terms of keeping opponents out of transition, where they were terrible last season.
They don't get back on defense.
They don't get back on defense. Well, Stan Van Gundy teams have been top 10 in the NBA 10 out of his 11 seasons. Limiting the opponent's number of points per possession, 9 out of 11 seasons, they've been in the top 10. Opponent free throw rate, 7 out of his 11 seasons, they've been in the top 10. 10 out of the 11 seasons, they've been in the top half. Defensive rebounding rate, second chance points allowed, again, top 10 in 10 of his 11 seasons. And here's the last number. So Cleaning the Glass is a site that tracks a stat, which is location effective field goal percentage. Basically, what it boils down to.
Shot selection?
It measures how good are you from the most efficient areas, right? And that's at the rim, the free throw line, and those corner threes. So the inverse of that is how good are you at defending those areas. If you look at Van Gundy's 11 years, his worst finish was 14th, and that was on that bad Detroit team. He's been in the top 10 every other season, top 5, 8 of his 11 seasons, and 5 times he has finished number 1 overall in terms of protecting the most vulnerable spots on a basketball court from a defensive perspective. Here's a quote from the Ringer article where all these numbers are laid out. Quote, "That's what a Stan Van Gundy team does. Controls the defensive glass, keep opponents off the line and out of transition. It takes care of the ball, keeps offenses out of the paint, forces them to shoot shots they don't want to take." If that doesn't sound, if you have watched this Pelicans team in the Gentry era, and if that doesn't sound like the exact fix to all of the problems that have made you want to pull your hair out for the last 5 years, then I don't know what will. Because to me, this sounds like finally getting down the core fundamentals, which then can allow the talent to shine, and Ingram and Zion, and allow these guys to start to have some belief in themselves that they can win.
Ryan Theriot next, talking baseball.
Off the bench with Colada and T-Bob.